you everyone for joining us here today. My name is Emily Nostroza. I'm here with Eric Pingarone. We're super excited to talk to you all today about how to create a winning resume. So Eric, if you can go ahead and share your screen. Okay,
Yeah, I think I just lost rights to host.
Yes. I had to take it back for a hot second to start recording, but I sent it back to you.
Okay, so just bear with me.
Cool.
Let me do that.
And if you guys would like, feel free to join us on camera too, but no pressure at all. All right, so to kick the session off, we're going to start out with some introductions. So my name is Emily Nostroza. I was born and raised in the San Fernando Valley, specifically in the city of Mission Hills, if any of you guys are aware with that. I also attended Grover Cleveland High School, if anyone went there as well. But to give you a little bit more about my background, so I grew up in a two-parent Latino household. My dad was an immigrant from El Salvador, and to this day, my dad has played such a pivotal and instrumental role in the person I am today and my overall outlook in life. Growing up, I often saw my dad, sacrifice a lot of time and effort to learn English. He put himself through school and was able to earn his associates in college as well as his bachelor's degree. Later on in life, once I was in high school, is when he finally graduated college. And seeing him go through that entire experience really taught me the value of education. It taught me that hard work can really pay off in life. And ultimately, throughout my growth, it really forced me to, work hard in school. So ever since I was young, I always aspired to get good grades, make my parents proud. I was highly involved, and fortunately, this all helped to prepare me for going to college, where I ultimately attended USC and earned my bachelor's degree in business administration. After college, I started my career at a company called Deloitte. So I now work as a business consultant in their consulting practice. So if you're curious to know what Deloitte is or what consulting is, definitely let me know and I can talk more about that. But overall, I'm very passionate about being a Latina, especially in corporate America, because there's so few of us. So I always like to give back to my Latino community, hopefully to aspire and uplift the community and also help get more Latinos, into consulting or corporate America or whatever it is that they're looking to achieve. Because of course, although I've had a very successful journey up until this point, that could not have all been possible without all of the people who helped make me who I am today, who helped to mentor me, guide me, and advise me, because I'm not sure if you guys have heard, but it takes a village to get someone somewhere successful. So never be afraid to ask for help. And there will always be mentors and people out there who will root for you and help you get to where you want to be in life. So with that, I'll pass it over to Eric to introduce himself.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. So for those who are on the call and our viewers, my name is Eric Pingarone. I was born and raised in Pasadena, California. Unlike Emily, I was raised by a single mother. So early on, I understood, my humble beginnings, given that my mom had to work extra to make ends meet. However, as I, reflect back in my early years, she always instilled in me to continue to pursue higher education, despite not doing well in middle school and high school. I was not the brightest nor the smartest, but I was always very resourceful and always found a way to, be curious about how things kind of operate and worked. It was after high school graduation where, a friend of mine, convinced me to enroll at PCC, Pasadena City College, because he didn't want to start his personal journey alone. In hindsight, that was the biggest decision I made in my life for my own good, given that it opened up this new world of academia, something that early on I never aspire or ever imagine in pursuing. And so shortly after completing my associate's degree in business at PCC, I transferred to CSUN where I earned my bachelor's in accounting. And then most recently, I just earned my master's at USC, one of my dream school. And so with that being said, I've had numerous of individuals supporting my professional journey, given that early on, especially at PCC, I struggled to develop key skills such as putting together a sentence, how to speak effectively, because my first language was Spanish, and so I struggled very early on in my career on how to speak correctly and also write. So that journey in itself was something great of a great challenge, but it was rewarding because now my writing and speaking and communication skills are my strongest suit, which has allowed me to really develop a successful career in business. So shortly after graduating from CSUN, I joined PwC. And for those who don't know what PwC is, it stands for PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is one of the most prestigious business firms in the world. And so I was very fortunate to intern there while I was at CSUN. And then upon completing my internship, they offered me a full-time offer, which ultimately changed my life for the better. I am now, I can probably now share that, I have very, a very, competitive salary. I'm now a proud homeowner. I've had the privilege to travel to over 10 plus countries, and every summer I make it a thing to travel overseas because now I have the means and the resources, unlike I did, back in the day. And so, yeah. And so I recently joined Deloitte not long ago since, I pivot careers from accounting to management consulting. And so to Emily's earlier comment, we're definitely business consultants working for, a large prestigious firm. And so if you're interested in learning more, feel free to reach out. But nonetheless, been very proud of my professional and personal journey. And along the way, I've had a handful of individuals who have had significant influence in my life. And so now I make it, a priority to help others alike who are in their early stages in their career to kind of find what they're looking at, what they want to pursue, and what kind of career they want to follow. And so glad that we got invited by Alumni 360 to kind of share what a winning resume is. And yeah, looking forward to sharing more about that.
Awesome. So now that we've gotten to share a little bit about ourselves, we now want to get to know a little bit about you and where you are in your journey. So if you could use the Zoom annotation feature and use the little stickers to indicate in these circles, exactly where you are, it'll help us understand a little bit more about you guys and just how we can tailor our presentation as well. And also looks like most of you guys are in college, so feel free to select the freshman in college option, so we can keep that in mind.
So I'll move on to the next slide, given that, we definitely understand where our audience, currently sits, but yeah.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and kick it off. But before I do, let me just set the stage so that, we have an understanding of what a winning resume is. So let's imagine you landed your dream job, at one of the most prestigious firms or companies in the world. For example, let's say you just landed your dream job at Apple headquarters in Silicon Valley, the home of all tech companies, and you've been assigned to work on the next iPhone 16, where you get to decide, what features will be released for the next generation of iPhones. I don't know about you, but this sounds extremely exciting, knowing that I'll have the privilege and opportunity to be working on the next big thing. However, in order to land this dream job, you will need to have a winning resume that will stand out amongst all your peers and candidates. But keep in mind, this is Apple we're talking about, and there's thousands of applicants trying to land this dream role. Today, Emily and I are here to kind of share and walk you through what it takes to build a successful resume, and also how to land your dream job and stand amongst your peers. And along the way, we'll be sharing tips and tricks on how to stand out, given that we have successfully transitioned from the college collegiate years to now, the professional setting. And so just want to set the stage so that you understand the importance and relevance of having a winning resume. So on to the next.
All right, so before we get into the content of building a resume, we'd love if you guys can use the Zoom annotation feature to add, why you're here today and what you want to learn. If there's anything specific related to resumes or anything in general that Eric and I can help to answer, whether that's navigating, the job search, transitioning from college to the workforce, mentorship, any questions that we can help to answer, we'd love to hear them, so we can provide our tips, tricks, and any advice that we have.
Or networking, which is a powerful thing to do in today's world.
Well, I guess just we have two. Do you want to get off mic, Jennifer or Lizeth, and share any questions that you may have had in any of these areas? Since Lizeth, you're heading into workforce in the next year or so, and Jennifer, you're already there. Any thoughts?
I do have a question. So I'm gonna be completely honest. I've never actually had to use a resume. But I know that because I do want to enter a new industry, I'm gonna have to start building a resume, even if I don't have the necessary experience. But something that makes me really nervous is now with AI, how do I ensure that my resume is gonna stand out,
Yeah, well, you're in the right place.
Okay, great. Because you hear all these things about you have to use certain words and then certain lines.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Now
Yes.
we completely understand those sentiments, given that AI has definitely, impacted a lot of industries and a lot of processes, one of which is resume building. And now employers are definitely using advanced tools to kind of screen through thousands of resumes. And so we definitely embedded, that into our presentation because things are changing drastically, right? You made a comment that, you haven't started a resume, perhaps you've gone, your current job or previous jobs, right, from through a referral or through word of mouth. Today, as you try to pivot into corporate America or any profession, the first thing you want to do is have a resume, right? Because that's going to speak to your achievements, to your accomplishments, and to your and to your work experience, which is very relevant despite what industry you're in. I'll leave it at that. Emily, any comments or additions?
Nothing additional to add, but definitely good question, and we'll make sure to cover that.
Yep. So we'll move on.
All right. So in talking about a resume, we first wanted to just provide an overview of what a resume should look like and what are the key components that you want to include in your resume. So here to the left-hand side, we actually have my resume. This is the resume that I used to apply for the job that I have now. So this was my, I would say I developed this when I was about a senior in college, right? Applying for full-time jobs. As you can see, the resume looks very clean, very full, lots of experiences on here. And in terms of the content, we'll see that at the top, we have our header with our name, contact information. I included my education here, my college at USC. I included my experience section, which includes all the previous internships that I had throughout college. Then we have our leadership and involvement section, which for me includes student clubs that I was involved in during college, but this can also include any volunteer, community service experiences that you may have. And then lastly, at the bottom, we have our skills and interests section, which includes any technical skills, languages, and any personal interests that you have. So this is just a high-level overview of the different components that you're going to want to include in your resume. I'll pass it over to Eric to talk about the header.
Yep, and so for the subsequent slides, we're going to definitely go more in depth for each section so that you understand the importance and what type of information you want to add in your resume. And so I'll start with the header, right? The header is the most important part of your resume because it's going to speak to your resume, right? So you want to make sure that your name is, large enough so that it's legible and that it's easy to read. You want to make sure that it's bold so that it stands out and it speaks and brings your personality out on paper. You also want to make sure that you list out your contact information and which is, which translates into your email and your cell number. However, as it relates to your email, you want to keep it professional. And what do I mean by that? I mean, you want to make sure that you list out, a professional email that includes your first name and last name, and perhaps your lucky number, or because you don't want to add an email that's inappropriate or childish, like hotbarbie@gmail. You want to make sure that it's professional and that it maintains that tone throughout the document. Another critical component that you probably may have heard at this point is the importance of having a LinkedIn profile. If you do, make sure that you add your LinkedIn URL address at the top of, right below your name, so that individuals can go ahead and look you up on LinkedIn and kind of just get a high level sense of your immediate accomplishments, your work experience, and perhaps a short bio, given that a lot of people on LinkedIn kind of share whether they're open for work or they're looking to transition into different industries. In the event that you don't have a LinkedIn account or profile, you want to make sure that you list out your location. This could be your city where you currently live. One of the things that I definitely want to call out is that you don't want to use your home address anymore. That's an antiquated approach to list out on your resume, because you want to make sure that that there's privacy on this document. In the event that you apply for a specific role, obviously the job application is going to ask for your address, but for your resume, keep it very simple and make sure that there's a barrier of privacy in that regard. Onto the education section. Any questions before proceeding? No questions? Cool. Emily?
Yeah, I think the header section is pretty straightforward. So for the education section, you're going to want to include your school, whether that's your high school, college, or trade school. You're going to want to include your GPA. And again, I want to emphasize the importance of GPA, because if you're looking to work for a top employer, think of your Apple, Google's, Deloitte, or PwC. They're looking for candidates that have a high GPA. At least for Deloitte, where I work, we only recruit candidates with at least a 3.2 GPA. So, do your best to work hard in school and keep your GPA as high as you can. Usually, if your GPA is below a 2.5, best practice is to just not include it and only mention it when it's brought up, to the employer. Other sections that you're going to want to include is your graduation date, your degree, minor, if you're pursuing a double major, any minor, definitely make sure to include that. All right. Then the next section we have here is your experience section. So the experience section, aside from your name, the experience section is the most important part of your resume. This is what employers are really looking to read in your resume. And, as it was mentioned earlier, employers are now using AI and other advanced technologies to review and scan your resumes. And ultimately, they're scoring your resumes based on the content included on here. And obviously, most of your content is here in the experience section, where they're looking for keywords, numbers, any buzzwords, anything that's relevant to the job role and job description. They're scanning for those key pieces of information. So for this experience section, you're going to want to make sure you include your experiences in chronological order, with your most recent experience at the top. And then in terms of the content, the most important thing I can say is that your resume is not a job description. Your resume should not list out what you did in your job role. Instead, your resume should include what you learned, what you accomplished, what impact you made, or what value you created in those previous job experiences. And just to give you an example, let's just say you worked at Starbucks. A bad bullet point would be prepared 25 lattes for customers daily. That's only telling me what I did. But if I really wanted to transform that into a good resume bullet point, instead I could say, engaged with 25 customers daily, prepared their beverages timely, and created a positive customer experience. So in that bullet point, yes, I prepared 25 lattes, but I'm telling you the value that I created, which was that I created a positive customer experience for those who are coming into Starbucks. So this is just one example of how you could turn one simple, job role into something that communicates value. All right, and just to further dive into other key components that you're going to want to include in the experience section. So firstly, as I mentioned, your experience is not a job description. So always do your best for every single bullet point to show the impact and value that you created for that company. So when you're writing your resume, if your bullet point does not show value or impact, it's not good enough. Revise it, iterate it, and make sure that it's strong enough to communicate those key points. Secondly, you're going to want to quantify wherever possible. And what I mean by this is adding numbers into your bullet points to really showcase your impact. And so this can be the number of customers that you worked with, how much sales did you generate, how many people did you train, how many people did you manage. Quantifying your bullet points wherever you can is just very important to showcase your impact. I didn't just prepare lattes on a daily basis. I prepared 50 lattes daily, just to show the magnitude of your work. Next, you're gonna.
One second. Can I jump in?
Of course.
My brain's making connections. So Jennifer, this is really great for the things you do, quantifying your impact in the music industry. I didn't just help throw concerts, being very specific of how many people were served, what was the impact, what was the revenue, and the underlying ripple effect of your work.
Yeah, and you can include planning, right? Collaborating with different individuals, right, to make the event possible. So this is your opportunity to really quantify your experience and really stand out amongst your peers. And this is what you really want to do, because it's going to show, that you're well-rounded, that you have, quality skills that are transferable for your new role that you're seeking.
Yes. All right, then the next thing, you're going to want to demonstrate your hard skills and your soft skills in your experience section. So we're going to talk about it later, but in your skills, you have the opportunity to list out, your hard skills, but really you want to demonstrate and show those in your experience section. So if you have hard skills, technical skills, show me in your experience section how you applied those technical skills that you have. If you have soft skills such as leadership, communication, teamwork, management, show me in the experience section how you demonstrated those soft skills. So this is where you want to really showcase these skills that you have. Next, you're going to want to make sure that you use action verbs. So every bullet point on your resume should start with an action verb, and every bullet point ideally should start with a different action verb to showcase different experiences and different skills. So action verbs could be like managed, created, developed, organized, planned, led, etc. And at the end of this presentation, I did also include a link to a website with a list of action verbs that you can also leverage as you're writing your bullet points out. And the next bucket here is applying any relevant buzz or keywords. So this is also another key way to stand out in the technology when your resume is being scanned, is by including these keywords. So every industry is going to have certain keywords or buzzwords, and you can probably Google search, if you're applying for software engineering or aerospace engineering, it could be aerospace engineering, job keywords, and there will be certain buzzwords that you want to include in your resume. So for example, if you're applying to be a software engineer at Apple, you're going to want to include buzzwords such as coding language, software development, data architecture, building a database, all of these terms that resonate with the industry and the job that you're applying to. Mm-hmm. And then the last point here is to tailor your resume to the job description. So what I like to do is I like to have the job description and my resume side by side. I'll scan the job description for any keywords or buzzwords that are included in there in terms of the requirements and skills that they're looking for. And then I'll do my best to incorporate those terms and skills onto my resume to clearly demonstrate to the employer that, hey, my resume has the exact skills that you're looking for because it has buzzwords, that are on the job description. So these are just a few key things that you're going to want to do in your resume to really make them stand out. I know I just said a lot. Are there any questions here or anything I may have missed? Does this make sense? Anything that's unclear? Okay. All right. And then to kind of bring all the pieces together, I have this formula here to help you write out your bullet points. So every bullet point in your experience section should start out with an action verb. It should then list out the task, and then it should always end with how you did it, why you did it, or what the result was. And when I say how you did it, it's how you did the task, why you did the task, or what the result was of the task. So going back to my Starbucks example, the example that I gave was engaged with 25 customers daily, prepared their beverages timely, and created a positive customer experience. So the action verb was engaged. The task was that I prepared their beverages, and the result was that I created a positive customer experience. So just following this format can really help you to make sure that you create a thorough and good bullet point. And then a few additional key points that I want to add is throughout your job, I highly recommend also keeping a live note or tracker of all of your job experiences, accomplishments, or achievements. So for example, in my job, I have a OneNote tracker, and I would say I revisit it about every month or so, anytime I have like a major accomplishment, and I'll jot that down. So for example, if I have a client presentation, a really big one, I'll say client presentation with X amount of people. And, I'll keep track of all of these key points. That way, when it's time to write or update my resume, I have this note handy that I could use to then populate my resume with all these key experiences that I have that I'm going to want to include. Another key thing that I want to mention is that no matter how small or large your experience is, whether you worked at Starbucks or if you worked at Apple, all of those experiences are relevant because of the value and the transferable skills that you gained and that you can bring to your next employer. So no matter what experience you have, an experience is an experience, and there will always be something that you gained for it, whether it was communication, leadership, anything. There will always be something that you can use. So never diminish any of your previous job experiences that you may have. And then the last thing I will say is to never sell yourself short. The resume is a place where you really want to boast about yourself. You really want to sell yourself on this paper. I know oftentimes in our culture, especially as Latinos, it's sometimes hard to share about our achievements and accomplishments. We don't like to boast about ourselves, but your resume is really your opportunity to share about what you've done. And you really have to advocate for yourself, because once you join the real world, no one else is going to be advocating for yourself but you. So it's really up to you to make yourself shine on this single piece of paper. Eric, is there anything else you'd like to add? Or
Yeah,
Jane?
I know a lot has been shared, but building a resume, you cannot accomplish it overnight. You definitely have to spend quality time to really build out your bullet points, because again, you want to make sure that you quantify your experience, that you highlight certain contributions that added value to the organization. And so here in my experience, when I was putting together my resume as an intern or as a college student, I would always defer to my career center or to friends or colleagues to really, get a chance to review my resume and just get immediate reactions, because sometimes we write things out that make sense to us, but when we present it or share with others, it may not convey the same message, right? So you always want to make sure that you get feedback so that you can refine your thought, make sure that it follows that formula that Emily just shared with you, so that it's more presentable, it's effective, and so that when the AI tool scans your resume, it has a top score. And so that ultimately, that's what we want to do in order to land that job of yours, right? You want to make sure that your resume is good to go. But again, I would reiterate and stress the importance of refining your resume, constantly, whether it be, tweaking a word or two. But once you make those changes and feel comfortable sharing, I guarantee you that you're going to have success in, getting invited for interviews for specific roles that you applied to.
Yeah, and just to add on as well, like it takes time to write a good resume. It's not something that you can just create in 30 minutes or an hour. Like it takes time. You revisit it. Because it's hard, to be honest. It's hard to write a one statement that's going to encompass everything that you did in a valuable and impactful way. So spend time on your resume. You know, I will say, like, in my experience, like, it took me hours to write a solid resume, you know, revisit it a day later, get feedback. You know, I would review it with my mentors. But again, like, this is all very important because this is ultimately what gets you your foot out the door to then interview with a company, because your resume is the first thing that they're going to see about you. So you want to make sure that it's the best that it can be.
And I'll jump in right before you move on to the last point that you made. First of all, I want to welcome Emina to the group, and Kenya's here as well. And then Fatima texted me. She said she's going to watch the replay. So we definitely have some people joining us at the later time as well. Don't sell yourself short. That is huge. You said it, and then very quickly, but that is a huge thing, especially with people of our demographics, of women, people of color. We can do a whole meeting just about that.
Yes.
But there's a few stats I want you to be aware of. So for sometimes I've seen it where there's a job description and a lot of women won't even go for the job description because they only meet 7 out of the 10 qualifications, where they did the stats of where a lot of men will, even if they haven't met all the qualifications. So once you become aware of these things, of how you're presenting yourself, but also how you're interacting with the job descriptions or whatever you're stepping up to, really not selling yourself short. And I think they're going to talk about it later. Really looking at your gifts and abilities in a new way is going to be huge. So I just wanted to really hone that part in and to make sure, because that could make or break, you know, the whole experience of the way you look at yourself, the way you look at your abilities and your experiences.
Yeah, no, that's a great point because yeah, when you are reviewing or a job posting right of interest, and you see 1 or 2 qualifications that you may not have, you may not apply to it, and that's a missed opportunity. So again, never sell yourself short. Perhaps you need a little bit more experience in those areas, but that's more than enough because we have 8 of them, right, that you meet, and so that's an excellent point to bring up. Onto leadership and involvement. So now we got a chance to talk about education, listing out your education, and really talk about your experience. Now we have the fun section, and I love this part of the resume because now it gives you an opportunity to really personalize and really share and really open up yourself to your employer or to the person reviewing your resume, right? And so here, I definitely want to highlight, what type of activities you want to list out within, the leadership and involvement section, starting with extracurricular activities. I know that, aside from, studying for exams or working, our part-time jobs, we have other interests outside of work. And many of you perhaps have played soccer or sports, right, in high school or in college. So you want to make sure you list those out because that really speaks to your character, that speaks to your development of interacting with people outside your immediate circle, which, again, there's a skill that's transferable there. You also want to list out student organizations involvement. These are like, your school clubs, like your chess, your debate, or your ethnic clubs. For example, while I was at CSUN, I joined ALPHA, the Association of Latino Professionals for America. And this is where I had the opportunity to really develop professionally and also expand my network because, I'm a first generation college student. I'm the first one in my family to pursue, a professional career. And so I don't have people within my immediate circle to really tap in and ask for professional advice, right? I remember back in the day when I had my first interview, I didn't even know how to put together a tie. Maybe that goes back to, growing up, being raised by a single mom, but I was quickly confronted with that challenge, right? But luckily I had ALPHA and, my club folks to really, teach me and putting together not just my tie, but also kind of polish myself and how I present myself to others. And so fast forward to today, I am now part of the board of directors for the professional chapter for the SoCal region. And so, I love to give back. I love to share my story and really highlight that as long as you're committed to, your development, things are gonna, come to reality. Maybe not as quick as you may want to, but you're striving in a positive, and you're trending to becoming and changing your life in a very impactful way. On top of that, I built my professional network. I got a chance to, meet, CEOs, VPs from across, your top Fortune 100 companies. So again, depending on what industry you're in, there's always an association or a club or a group that really caters to that area. And so I would highly encourage you to, search, what clubs are specific to business or consulting or the music industry or entertainment, so that at least you get acquainted with individuals who can help you, transition or pivot into that new field that you're pursuing. And so for me, it worked out. And to this day, it's the most rewarding experience that I have on top of my career. Volunteer experience you also want to list out, and I know in high school a lot of folks, help, your local hospital, your church or library. And so at least for me, when I was in high school, my mom always found ways to keep me occupied. And so I volunteered at my local library. And so from there on, even though I was not, your biggest reader, it gave me access to, people. And so I've been able to now go back to my library, my local library or local center in Pasadena, and really share, my testimony about my personal journey as a professional and also personal. I think here Emily has a few things to share, and so I would definitely pass on the mic to her to speak more about volunteering.
Yeah. In terms of like community service, I particularly was also highly involved with volunteering in high school because I realized the importance of it in preparing your college applications. So if you are a high school student, I highly encourage you to volunteer because that looks really good in college apps, and it also looks really, really good in terms of gaining experience. So for me, I volunteered at an animal shelter. I love animals, so I volunteered at the Best Friends Animal Shelter in Mission Hills. I also volunteered at a senior living center where I hosted Friday game night for senior residents at that center. And then for my last volunteer experience, I really wanted to do something that I was passionate about and that I felt like would have a lot of impact. So I volunteered with a nonprofit called School on Wheels, where I tutored homeless children. And to this day, that was one of the most fulfilling, meaningful, and life-changing experiences that I had. I grew up in a very, fortunate household. And so being able to go to a women and children's center and be able to tutor children was a really huge experience for me. And I just highly encourage you to volunteer and be involved in your community because it really opens your eyes to new experiences that can really shape how you look at things.
Mm-hmm.
And then one more thing I will add is I cannot emphasize enough the importance of being involved in a student org, especially in college. Similar to Eric, I was also part of Alpha. So I was president of Alpha at USC. And I always joke around, but Alpha introduced me to my friends and helped me get my job because that was where I networked and met the professionals who ultimately helped me land my current job that I have. And it also introduced me to the love of my life because my fiance was also part of Alpha and I met him at an Alpha meeting. So you never know who you're going to meet. But that organization gave me, yeah.
Can you redefine alpha? Because some people may not.
Yeah. And Eric, would you mind putting it in the chat? You could visit it on alpha.org as well, but Alpha stands for Association of Latino Professionals for America. So this is a Latino business organization that it exists in most universities at the undergraduate level. And then there's also professional chapters for each major city. So I was involved at the USC student chapter, and then Eric's involved with the professional Los Angeles chapter. So that organization really exposed me to a great network of people, mentors, friends, and to this day, like I'm still involved with people who are in Alpha, and the organization has offered me so much in terms of helping me get to where I am today.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So moving on to the last section of the resume, which is skills and interests. And for me, this is the fun section because it gives you an opportunity to really highlight hard skills, right? Right now, your Metas, your Googles, your Apples are now offering, free certifications. And so this is the opportunity to really upskill on a particular subject or area so that, as you try to transition into a new role or interested in pursuing a new industry, this is the opportunity to really build that case that, hey, I'm doing XYZ because I want to do, ABC, right? And so oftentimes, it's hard to make transitions, but if you're showcasing, right, and spending time on earning specific certifications or being involved with particular organizations, it just makes that case a lot more fluid, given that you're able to bridge the gap. Languages, you want to make sure you list out any language outside of English that you're fluent in, and make sure that you also add, the level of fluency. I speak, I'm bilingual. I speak Spanish. That was my first language, and so I definitely list that as advanced, given that I can speak it, and I can also speak bus business Spanish and business, which is a little different than your typical, talking, over dinner. And so here, never sell yourself short. If you have a new language you're practicing on, add it because you never know who's going to be reviewing your resume. Perhaps they're in that same journey as you in trying to learn a new language. You also want to list out any relevant or notable awards, and this could be, scholarships, especially, as a college student, you want to make sure that you add that because it shows academic achievement and which translates into, hey, you're doing everything right, you're serious about, a particular area or subject, and as a result, you got rewarded for that. And so again, you want to make sure that you use your resume to highlight all of that. You also want to list out any leadership roles you currently have with like student orgs. This really, gives an employer, right, or the person reviewing your resume, right, an opportunity to really see, hey, what are you doing outside, classwork? And so for me, in my experience at CSUN and at USC, I was part of, the Alpha student chapter. And so I eventually became the VP, the vice president for the club. And so that gave me an opportunity to continue to hone in on my key skills as far as public speaking, building a network, and things of that matter. And so make sure you include that. And then interest. This is the fun part. This is where you want to list out any personal hobbies you may have that really strike you, right? For instance, for me, I love hiking, I love cycling, and as a most recent, I love golfing. And so when you bring those three things into the picture, into the conversation, I'm just gonna spark. And so you want to make sure that you list out interests that really, resonate with you, because the one thing you don't want to do is list out interests that align with the job profile that you're applying for. You don't want to do that. You always want to stay true to yourself and want to make sure that resonates across your entire resume.
I'm going to jump in really quick then, just to support you on the language part, right? Because we're going into a more of a global society. Anything along those lines are key. And I like the fact that you separated almost conversational language versus business and academic. Or are going to be looking at that. And don't forget, we are not really headed towards the creative economy. So I'm trying to train C-suite to look at the hobbies and interests of people to see how those transfer into the work life. So that section down there, I believe in the next 3 to 5 years are going to be even more critical than just your BABS, because that's where creativity lies in, is your ability to have cross experiences in multiple areas and hobbies and fields.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember my first interview when I applied at PwC. I had soccer, and obviously interests and hobbies evolve over time. But at the time, I had soccer listed there, and I made an immediate connection. And the conversation, it took away the stress from the room, and it just made the conversation a lot more comfortable knowing that we had something in common. And so you always want to list out things that speak to you truly, because once you meet someone who's also interested in that specific area or subject or hobby, it's gonna make things easier for you. And then on to the last part, the formatting. Formatting plays a critical role because you want to make sure that your resume is easy to read, it's well balanced between your text and white space, because one of the things you don't want to do is come across a resume that's just that's heavy text and it's just hard to read. You want to maintain a 1 inch margin throughout your resume to ensure that you use the entire white space and the entire page, right? You don't want to miss out on anything, because again, the resume is the first impression and the first document that an employer is going to get from your behalf. You want to make sure that text is aligned to the left. And then also you want to make sure that font style and size is consistent. You want to make sure that you use Times New Roman, and do not use a font larger than 12. I typically use size 11 just because I now have more content to kind of share about my work experience. But in your case, I think if you're in college, right, looking into applying for your first job, or looking into applying to an internship, a font of size 12 is enough. You want to make sure that your resume tense is consistent across the entire document. So you want to make sure that everything is in past tense, with the exception of your current job, right? You want to make sure that that's in present tense. And then important thing to note, 1 page. Keep it to 1 page, especially for entry-level roles. You want to make sure that your resume does not bleed into a 2-pager. You want to make sure that everything's concise and fit it into a 1 page, which I think it's hard depending on where you sit, right? If you're a college student that has very limited experience, that might be hard. Versus in my case, I might have more experience. It's kind of hard to jam-pack everything into 1 page. But again, building a resume is not going to happen overnight. You're going to go through multiple iterations, and you're going to have to get some feedback to ensure that you have the best document in front of you. One of the things also to note is, do not use colors nor include a headshot, right? You want to make sure that all the space that all the 1 page, you want to make sure that everything fits into one page, and you don't want to add a headshot, because that's going to rob you away from listing a point that's relevant to the job posting. Unless you're applying for an artistic, creative, or graphic design role, the rules change. But in most situations, a 1-pager is definitely gonna be more than enough. And as long as you're following the formatting that I just suggested, you'll be in good shape.
All right, then the last thing we wanted to show here was just my first resume. So again, the last resume that you were looking at was one that I used to apply for my full-time job, but this was actually the first resume that I ever created when I was a freshman student looking to apply for an internship. But regardless of where you are in your journey, your resume will still have the key components that we mentioned. So again, at the top, we have our header. We have our education section, which here, given that I was a freshman student, I included both my high school and college experience. Once I was a sophomore, I removed all my high school experience, but while I was a freshman, I did still include those high school experiences. In terms of my experience, at this point in time, I hadn't had a job or any work experience, so I didn't really have anything to populate. I just included the section and wrote out, this will be my first opportunity for employment, to let the employer know that this was my first time applying for a job. But although I didn't have work experience, I did have substantial volunteer experience. So I included all of that, and that definitely helped to showcase and highlight those soft skills that I did have. At the bottom, I included my extracurricular activities, which were student clubs that I was involved in. I also included my skills, which at that time were my language and Microsoft Office. And then lastly, included my interest. So, this is a more simple version, but still it has all those main components that you want to include in a resume.
Yeah, another thing too that I forgot to kind of mention is, you never want to lie on your resume, right? Because the moment that an employer asks about your specific experience, interest, or education, you want to make sure that you're not lying or falsifying anything, right? Because in the event that they do ask you questions about a particular experience, you're automatically going to freeze, and that's not going to be a good impression. And so always be mindful to include relevant coursework or work experience, but never lie.
Yes. And again, if you're in high school or college, take action now in terms of, getting involved with internships, student clubs, because this is all information that you're going to need to include in your resume. So, prepare all this experiences so that your resume can be ready when it's time to apply for a full-time job. I think also most colleges now, when you're applying for them, they ask for your resume. So it's very helpful too, to just have one handy and have experiences that you can speak to.
Yeah, another thing that came to mind is, be intentional and strategic as far as involvement, right? Don't just, volunteer at your local hospital or whatever the case might be, just to kind of add more experience or more content to your resume. Make sure that you're strategic as far as the organizations that you get involved in, just so that, it gives you the opportunity to develop and also learn and network within, that industry of choice.
And then the last thing I want to add is in a couple slides, I included a slide with helpful links. Actually, Eric, can you go to that slide? 2 slides down. So here I included a link to my resume template. So it's a Google Doc version of the resume that you were looking at. So just create a copy of it onto your Google Drive and you can have the template to use for your own resume. I also included a cover letter template, if that can be handy to you all. For most employers, I think just submitting a resume is fine, but some of them do ask for a cover letter. So I also included a template for that. I have a link here for resume action verbs. And then I also included a link to a networking template that I used to help me keep track of jobs that I would apply to or people that I would network with, when I would meet with them, what company they work for, just to keep track of all these experiences as you're networking and recruiting for a job. And then, of course, and then the last thing too, again, like we said, building a resume is not easy. So leverage your resources, your network, your mentors. We included our contact information as well. So if you want to reach out to us for any resume help, we're more than happy to share any of our experiences and provide feedback.
And I know we shared a lot today, but if you have any questions or, reactions to the content that we shared, feel free to ask questions, before we conclude the presentation.
Yes. All right. Any questions?
Awesome. Round of applause. Thank you. And any questions or any connections or ahas? Thank you so much. And there's some links in the chat to review as well. Or we have 2 Jennifers here. All right, so could each person kind of just share off mic or on mic what resonated with
takeaways?
Yeah. Or whoever who can. Jennifer, usually you're my go-to person to see. Look off mic.
There's a lot of new information that I learned. Like, even though I haven't used a resume before, I've written resumes before, and I've never seen the interest portion of a resume. Like, that's the first time I've heard of that, and I honestly see the importance of it. Like, it helps the reader or employer learn a little bit about yourself. And I was like, wow, I never really thought about that. But I did have one quick question, actually. So you know how when you graduate college, you have the year and the month? I've been told by some people not to include that at all. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I can definitely answer. Or Emily, you want to take it away?
Yeah, so my take is when you're right out of college, it's okay to include that because you're applying for an entry level role, like you have 0 experience. So letting the recruiter know that you just graduated college is good, just so they know that you're looking for that entry level role. I do think maybe once you have more than 3 to 5 years out of college, including it not including it is okay, given that at that point in time, your degree doesn't speak for you, your experiences do. But while you're out of college, your degree is really all you have, aside from maybe some experience. But that's my take.
Yeah, agree.
Oh, I like that. I might have to write that. Your degree doesn't define you, but your experiences do.
100%.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, I really learned a lot from your presentation, guys. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, so make sure to include interest in your resume.
Yeah, I will now. Yeah.
I'll-
Also, thank you for sharing the templates. The networking template is something I'm actually really gonna want to use.
Oh yeah, you'll be surprised how many people you'll probably meet over the course of a year. At least my LinkedIn, how I think I now have, I think over 3,000 people, and so as far as like LinkedIn etiquette, I try to invite people within my network that I at least know and come in touch, whether it be in person or online. And so, yeah, once you build a LinkedIn, you're probably going to get a bunch of requests, but just be intentional how you manage your network because you want to make sure they know you for who you are. And so in the event that you're looking for a new role or interested in learning about a specific industry, you can easily tap into your network.
Yeah, we did a LinkedIn. Actually, the CEO of LinkedIn, who I served on the board with, gave a small message to my group. Oh my gosh, ago. Lizette said in the chat to me, what resonated with me was the experience section. It definitely gave me some helpful insights on how I can make my resume better. So thank you so much. Any other questions? Imena, did anything jump out for you if you wanted to say hi? If not, that's fine as well. Or
I mean, nothing. I don't know. It was all very helpful though. So thank you.
yes, she is an artist, so she's a painter and that. So what does that look like in the arts field as well, right? So having that transferred. Kenya, if you're able to say something, you can jump in on now. If you're around. And if not, that's fine. Jennifer, the other Jennifer, I see someone else here. Cool. So as far as the PowerPoint with the hyperlinks, or is that to be shared, or Elizabeth?
Yeah, I actually wanted to question that. How would we get access to those links?
Yeah, so wait, Eric, did you share the PDF, the PDF version with Liz?
Yeah, I shared the deck with her. So Liz, feel free to share with members from the organ from Alumni 360 so that they have access to that. And I also hope that you guys socialize this recording because I feel like there's a lot of value, right? And to this, or I forgot who mentioned it, but learning about adding interest to your resume. If you don't know it, you don't want to miss out. So I feel like by socializing this deck and the presentation, it can go a long way with your journey.
Wonderful.
Yes, so I can definitely send out an email or a text message with whichever people prefer to the Alumni 360 members so they could just have this template on hand since Eric did send me his deck. But right now I'm going to review some of our members in here to see if we have their contact information, because if not, then we definitely need that in our records.
Reason why is because we do send you a small gift card from Amazon for coming to the class. So keep that in mind. So you definitely want to make sure Lizbeth has your information, Lizbeth and Kenya. And so there is a link in there. If you could reshare that link so it goes to the top of people's lists. So make sure it's that. And we do want to send a special thank you to Emily and Eric for your time. Please know time is the most important resource that you have. You can always get more money. You can always buy a new phone, but if someone steals your time, you can never get that back. So thank you for your time, not just for today, but also for preparing and for all of that good stuff. And so once again, networking is crucial. So consider them a part of your network. You too, consider us a part of your network. Please reach out. And hopefully if we ever do something in person or do like a summit or a camp, you'll be able to drop by and see them in person. All right. And awesome. Any last things? So yeah, so make sure Elizabeth and Kenya have your contact information, or you can reach out to me if you can't get to them. The link should be there. to fill out that, and we will see you next time. Go have fun writing a wonderful resume, letting the world know who you are and how you shine bright like a diamond. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you all.
you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.